See, you know what? Because I heard the click stop and I thought you stopped.
Hey, what's up guys? It's Lucas and you're watching Fine Tuning. So I know I'm like Internet Explorer level behind the curve here, but today I want to talk to you about the PRS John Mayer Signature Silver Sky guitar, the core version. I know there's an SE version now. It's got a bunch of people butthurt several years ago. They got really upset because, I don't know, guitar players are weird. They're like, oh, that's a PRS, but it looks like a Strat. You can't do that. I just had never really had an opportunity to play one of the core models, really, and spend any time with it. But I went to one of the music stores that I do repair work for, and this was on the wall, and they said, oh yeah, go check that out. And I sat down and played with it for a while, and it was like, man, this is awesome. So they cut me a great deal on it, and I took it home. So I just wanted to kind of make a video talking about the guitar a little bit and showing you some of the stuff that I like and telling you about a couple of the things that maybe I don't like as much. And you know, you can kind of decide whether or not this is a guitar you might be interested in, might be the thing for you or not. But I'm not going to go too in-depth on specs or anything like that. There's all that stuff's available on PRS's website, and there's 50,000 videos on YouTube talking about the specs and comparing it to stuff. I just kind of want to show you what I do with it and what I think is cool, and if a spec is relevant to what I'm talking about, I'll mention it. But let's talk about my rig real quick, because I know I'll get a bunch of questions about that. I always do. So let's just knock that out. So I'll throw up a picture here on the screen, but my rig is just my pedal board that I gig with live. It has the amp and everything all on it. So for all intents and purposes, really what it is the ToneX pedal by IK Multimedia, and I have made a lot of captures of my favorite preamps of amps that I have, and I'm running those into the power amp of my BluGuitar Amp 1 Iridium edition. So I have kind of a preamp and a power amp thing going on, and I can patch in effects anywhere in that signal chain that I want to. So you're going to be hearing all amps that I own, just specific captures of those amps, my favorite amps. And that is sent via speaker cable into my cabinet, which is in my closet, mic'd up with a couple of mics, an SM57 and like a Lewitt DTP 440 or something like that. It's a tom mic, sounds good. And I have two speakers in that twin cab. That is the Warehouse Retro 30 and the Celestion Vintage 30, a classic Vintage 30 from like early 90s. So it's one of the better ones, I think. But that's it, really. Let's kind of just go over some sounds here. So we'll start with a clean sound, and I'll just kind of switch through the pickup selections. But this is a clone or a model capture of my early 90s USA-made Fender Blues Deluxe, the clean channel. And yeah, it's nice and warm and woody and has a sparkle to it. And that sounds like this. so that's kind of an overview of like some really clean sounds. Now, I will say that I'm not I'm not like a clean guitar player. At most, or at least, I guess is the word I'm looking for, I usually have got some kind of like compression or a little bit of overdrive or something, like a little bit, because to me the guitar feels really lifeless without it. And with this guitar in particular, it's hard to play. I think to play that clean with this guitar is difficult, which really I think says a lot about how good a guitar player John Mayer is. But the sound that you get when you do that sound, I mean the tone that you get from this guitar with that kind of sound is just really, really special. It's clean and sparkly, and it just sounds like raindrops. It's like, you know, just dripping. It's so pretty. I think it is just a terrific sound. It's just intimidating for me to play with. I do my best, but so that is, to me, one of the things that is interesting about this guitar is that I kind of feel like I have to fight it a little bit, but that's kind of what makes it sound that way, I guess, too. This guitar has a very shallow radius. The frets are, for me, pretty small. Like they're kind of small, short, vintage style frets. And it's got the longer scale length than I usually play. It's a 25.5-inch scale length. So it's a little challenging for me to play. The action has got to be set a little higher and stuff like that, and I'm kind of a wimp about that. And I have to use regular, just 10-gauge strings on it when I'm tuned a half step down. Whereas on my other guitars, I usually use like an 11 to 48 or a 10.5 to 48 or something like that. So I have to use a regular set of 10s, half step down. And it's a little challenging. But man, I mean, tell me what you think in the comments, but to me that tone right there is just the iconic mid-60s Fender Strat kind of tone. And it really, if you want to do John's stuff, it just is that sound. And of course, you know, that also applies to stuff like Stevie Ray and Kenny Wayne and stuff like that. Those guys that have that Strat thing, it will do that. But let's move to a sound with a little bit of drive on it. And this is, to me, a little more comfortable to play, but the guitar really still shines in a different way, but it still shines with this sound. So we're going to go over to a tone capture of my Legend Super Lead 50, and we'll start again with the bridge pickup. Now, out of the gate, I should mention, I'm going to leave the tone all the way up on the bridge pickup here, but generally speaking, when I'm playing live with this guitar, I roll the tone on the bridge pickup down to around half, because I think it can be a little pointy and maybe a little bit squealy sometimes if you start to get kind of loud. I don't know that these pickups are wax potted at all, or it maybe just very lightly or something. So they are a little reactive to high gain. So let's hear what that sounds like. So again, I just want to harp on, this is one of those guitars that I think is a little bit more difficult to play. Maybe not if you're like used to vintage Strat feeling type guitars, but for me, coming from a more modern guitar feel, I find it a little difficult to play. But you are really rewarded for working a little harder, because I think the tone of the guitar is just spectacular. Like if I had to pick out my favorite thing about the guitar, it is the tone of the guitar. Whereas some guitars, I think it's more like, this is so great to play, it stays in tune, it's so reliable, whatever. For this, it's the tone. Like, this is a guitar that sounds so good that like you always want to record. If you're like, I need a Strat sound for this song, well, you want this guitar. It's, you know, undoubtedly. So you can see there are moments where like I'm struggling for it a little bit. I've really got to work at it. So, you know, I've got to like sit and practice playing this guitar because it's a very specific thing. But man, that sound that comes out of it is just immaculate. It's just really, really nice. It's just clear and punchy, and there's that bell tone thing. There's a frequency that when you dig in it, you could just hear it. It sounds like Strat, you know, like what you think Strat should sound like. There it is. So that's terrific. I'm gonna, just so that I can say we covered it, I'm gonna go to like the high gain MT15 sound, and we'll just play on the bridge pickup and see if it does that okay. I don't know that I've actually tried that, so we'll see if this does chugga chugga or not. Oh, I also rolled the tone knob back to like halfway up, so it's not quite so single coil. It's like a little thicker sounding metal sound. Okay, so does it do metal? I mean, enough. I mean, like if you had to take just one guitar to a gig and all your other songs really called for this, but you had to do one metal song, which is ridiculous, then yeah, I mean, totally, you could get by with it. It'd be fine. But obviously, that's not what this guitar is meant to do. It's not its forte. But I'm impressed that it holds up that well, to be honest. It still has a nice kind of like clarity to it. It still sounds like a Strat, but it sounds like you're playing metal with a Strat, but like a good one, you know? So now, one thing I do think is a little unique about this is that I don't typically think of Strat style guitars, single coil bridge pickups, as having what I would call like a fat sound, even if you roll the tone down. If it's not like a really high output Strat pickup, you know, with A5 mags or something like that, if it's not, or, you know, a humbucker size single coil, I tend not to think of them as being fat. They tend to be, I think, more thin and wiry and spanky, you know, which is good for some stuff. But for me, as a guy who likes that kind of, you know, pseudo Eric Johnson kind of warm lead tone, I tend to find them a little pokey, But I found that this guitar actually, as you roll, you can roll the tone down a little bit. If you have the tone dialed in right on your amp with a little overdrive and delay, you can kind of get a warm, sweet humbucker kind of sound because of the way that the pickups are wound and the tone control and all that stuff. You can get something, I think, pretty cool. Like cool enough that I would happily play that sound all night and in the place of a humbucker guitar and be okay with it. So what I'm going to do is play primarily on the bridge pickup here. We're using a profile of my custom 50 head here on the drive channel, and yeah, a little bit of a TS-808 overdrive and also some delay. And that sounds like this. Okay, so now that I've played a bunch of sounds from the guitar from you, I kind of want to just talk a little bit about what I like and what I don't like, and you know, kind of who maybe the guitar is for and who it's not for. So first of all, what I like about the guitar more than anything is the tone. The pickup sound just fantastic. I mean, it took me a little getting used to because I'm kind of used to having a Strat with a little more oomph in the bridge pickup because I just always have an HSS or a Strat with a hot bridge pickup or something, and these are all real similar output. So it took me a little bit to get used to that, but after I kind of wrapped my head around it, I'm like, okay, I see what this does. And they're so clear and they're so consistent in that thing that they do that, I mean, you can really just get that sound anywhere on the neck, that particular chirpy Strat thing. So the tone of the guitar is for me like a 10 out of 10. It's just fantastic. Like, I don't think you could make the guitar sound any better as far as that kind of vintage Strat sound is concerned. I just don't think you could do any better. I think the guitar stays in tune admirably well, with maybe one small caveat. I have my guitar set up with the tremolo floating, so it pulls up a little bit, not much, like, you know, maybe a whole step, not quite a whole step, on the low E, you know. And when I'm just using regular kind of wiggly vibrato stuff, it stays in tune just fine. No problems there. And I can pretty well wail on it for a whole song, no problem. But I did notice, for whatever reason, and maybe it's the way the nut is that it's made of, I think it looks like it's made of bone. If I just pull up on the bar, it will pull the whole guitar a little sharp. And I can just wiggle the bar a little bit and it will come back to normal. But I've noticed that it does have a tendency to kind of catch a little bit of that. But again, that's one of those things where the guitar sounds so good that I kind of like just program into myself, don't do that. You know, don't, I'll show you. In tune. I say that, it's going to make a liar out of me now. But right there, it maybe did it a little bit. But there have been times where I'll play the guitar and I'll pull up on it, and it just feels like it's just a few cents sharp on every string. But it will correct itself. So it's like a little minuscule thing. I'm nitpicking. But tuning stability overall, really good. You can't dive bomb it. It's not a Floyd, but you can't do that with any non-locking tremolo, really. So I don't expect that from it. Now playability, I think, is an interesting thing. I am intimately familiar with PRS guitars, the trim system, the nuts, the frets, the neck profiles, the setup, angle, everything. I'm very familiar with these guitars. This one did throw me off a little bit because it is decidedly meant to be a vintage Strat feeling guitar. So it's got a very shallow radius, it's 7¼ inch radius, and as such, if you want to be able to bend strings and not have the note choke out, you can't have the action as low. These frets are immaculately level, so I mean, as good as you can make frets as far as level is concerned, but still, that shallow radius, if you have the action as low as I usually set it, then you can't bend very far and not have it choke out. So I do have to run the action a little higher, not a ton higher, but you know, if you play guitar, a small adjustment like that can really change the feel into your fingers and can kind of throw you off. So I have to work a little bit harder to play the guitar because of that, and also because I said it has shorter frets. That's in particular, not that they're thinner this way, but shorter height-wise. And so I find strings with the shorter frets, they're maybe a little harder to get your finger underneath. We're talking about really minuscule measurement differences here. But that's something that I have noticed is applicable to me. I like tall frets. My frets can be so tall that they're almost scalloped because I don't push down really hard, but it gives me that underneath it to bend it. These are really short. But again, I come back to, that may be part of what makes the guitar sound the way it does, that the action has to be a little bit higher. It just has that tone, and to me it's like, well, you want the vintage Strat tone, you got to play a guitar that feels like a vintage Strat. So, but the neck profile is fantastic. It is, I mean, it feels kind of like a Strat neck, but also kind of a PRS neck, if that makes sense. I mean, it's very comfortable, and it tapers nicely. Like it's a little thinner down here, but not too thin. There's a little bit of a bump. So it feels nice and comfortable when you're doing open chords down here. But as you get up here, it thickens out enough to feel comfortable in your palm if you're one of those guys like me who tends to play with your thumb over the top of the neck. Unless I'm playing super shreddy stuff, I tend to keep my thumb kind of over the top of my neck because I just feel like you get a better vibrato that way. Neck profile, just fantastic. I like the hardware, feels good. You know, the bridge, the tuners, all that. I mean, everything feels good. It stays in tune great, like I said, within reason. It doesn't have a backplate from the factory, so if that bothers you, just be aware of that. But I have never noticed this being an issue for me. Apparently, the guitar sounds better or different if you take the plate off. That's what, if Eric Johnson says it, then it probably is true. I just can't hear it. But it doesn't bother me not being there. So, and the neck heel to me is completely fine. I mean, I can get way up here, you know, in the upper A register, no problem, you know, and do all this stuff. So, you know, it's a neck heel with a bolt-on neck, but it's totally fine. It's pretty lightweight. This guitar's maybe, you know, 7¾ pounds, just pushing maybe 8 pounds or something like that. It's very comfortable weight for this style guitar. And I don't know, man, I'm really impressed with it, I'll be honest. It's one of those guitars that I feel like it does make you work a little harder, particularly if you're like me and you're not super experienced with, you know, vintage style Fender guitars. This makes you work for that a little bit. You know, it's a little harder to play, but consequently, you get more of a classic vintage Strat kind of sound out of it. So, I don't know. I think that's what he was going for, Paul and John. I think what they wanted was PRS's take on a vintage Strat with quality of life improvements, and I would say they absolutely stuck it. So, as far as who the guitar is for, if you're a guy, like let's say for instance, like you have a real 63 Strat, and you're like, I don't want to take my 63 Strat out to play, then this would be just a fantastic gigging replacement, because comparatively speaking, much less expensive, still fantastic sound, and it's going to feel really close. If you're one of those guys who just wants that classic Strat sound, I mean, this is really good for that. Because I'll be honest, I've had a lot of experience with the Fender stuff, and the American Fender main line that they're making right now is kind of hit and miss. I mean, when they do some of the more vintage style stuff, I tend to think it sounds pretty good, but then there'll be weird QC issues, and there's just all kinds of, they're making them on such a scale that it's just not, it's not quite as good as it could be. Now, when you get into custom shop Fender guitars, they're as good as you're gonna get a Fender guitar. Fender Custom Shop is really, really good. But for the comparable money, if you're buying an American Strat, American Deluxe, or American whatever Strat in the similar price range, I think this is better. Now, it doesn't look exactly like a Strat, so if you're really a headstock queen, then you're gonna care about that. But overall, I think this is a better guitar as far as playability and tone and staying in tune and that kind of stuff. So if I was gonna like rate the guitar, if I was gonna give it an out of 10 score, I don't know, 9 out of 10? I mean, maybe I could nitpick a little something about the, tuning stability here and there, but that's kind of inherent to this style of guitar. I think you're just never gonna have a Strat with a non-locking tremolo that stays in perfect tune. I just don't think it exists. You can get really close, and this is really close. But I just think, man, everything else about the guitar is so good. And these come set up from the factory with the tremolo decked. So if you don't use the tremolo, it's gonna stay in tune perfectly, and you're good all night long. But yeah, if I was gonna nitpick any one little thing, like maybe the tuning stability is a little questionable on the up pull or something. But other than that, man, the guitar just sounds so good. I mean, it just sounds so, I can't speak highly enough about that. If you want vintage mid-60s Strat sound, this absolutely sticks it. I mean, it is the sound that you hear on the records that you love. It is this. If you want to sound like John's guitar, this is it. If you want to sound like Stevie Ray or Kenny Wayne Shepherd or, any of those guys that do that kind of thing, this is that. It is that big, thick, full Strat sound that's real clear and punchy, and it's just, it's got a lot of character and personality. It's very touch sensitive and dynamic. I mean, if you play in a 3-piece band, this is a guitar for that kind of thing because it's so expressive. So yeah, if you've been thinking like, maybe I should check one of those out, that might be the guitar for me. If you're kind of thinking about it, yeah, it probably is, man. I'll be honest with you. And you can buy these used now, and not so bad as long as you're not getting one of the crazy paint jobs or something. I paid a very reasonable price for this guitar for an American PRS, and I don't regret it for a second. So I'm sure you'll see this guitar more on the channel, and I've already used it in recording stuff, and I'm going to be using it in some more recording stuff. I find it particularly cool with the shreds because that's a classic rock cover band. There's lots of great Strat moments over the history of classic rock for the past 50 years. So I use it a lot in that band, and it's held up for me admirably well through quite a few gigs already. So highly recommend that you check this out. I'll leave links to PRS's Silver Sky in the description. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Did you like the tone? Do you think it sounds as magical as I do? Until next time, I'll catch you later.